Hello everyone, and welcome to the Game Engine programming series where we write a game engine from scratch. Previously, we set up a platform-independent system for opening Windows, and we started implementing the platform-specific part for the Windows operating system. Today, we are going to continue writing this code, and hopefully we will learn something new along the way. So we need to create an instance of this window ID that points to an array where all our windows live. And we need a function to add this window that we just made to that array. We don't have this function yet, but I'm going to write it in a minute. But this will just add the window information in an array. Next, we need to set this callback function, for which we reserved space here. We need to fill that space in with the value of this function pointer. And that I can do when creating the window has succeeded. Here, I can set that callback function. If we have a callback function, I call this setWindowLongPointer to set the value of this callback function pointer at this index. That's the same way we asked for that information in the callback window proc, by getting the window long pointer at this index. And here I set it. And here we also assert that getLastError is 0, which indicates no error. And then we show the window. And we return this ID that we got from this function. Okay, now let's implement this function. First, here we'll have an array of Windows information. And here I'll do something that's temporary. Later on, we will have a nice container that will take care of what we will be doing here right now. But for now, I'm going to create something that keeps track of an array for us. So the point of this available slots is that when we remove windows from this array, then we can remember which slots were removed. And then when we add new windows again, we can reuse those spaces. If there are no available slots, that means that we haven't removed anything from this array yet. So we need to add new elements at the end of the array, like here. And otherwise, we can reuse these slots. Okay, because we are going to make this a generic free list later, I'm not going to use this ID anymore, but I'm going to just use U32s. And we can also remove a window info instance from this array. And for that, we are going to write a function as well. So now this way we are able to add and remove windows from this array. So in this create window function, we call this function and it will add the information into the array and it will give us back an ID. And we return this ID in an instance of this window class. And that's almost everything that we have to do to create this window. And next we can try and implement remove window, which is pretty simple. It just destroys the window and removes it from the array. So now we have this ID, and I'm going to write a function that will get this information by using this ID. So when the user closes a window, or we just want to remove a window in the level editor, we can call this function to destroy this window object and remove it from the array. Next, we can go ahead and implement these methods from window class. And these functions are just going to call the platform-specific versions of these functions that we are going to implement here in this anonymous namespace. Now, for example, to implement this set full screen, I'm going to call a function that's set window full screen with this ID. And of course, I check if this instance of window is valid. Now I'm going to implement this function. Again, we're going to get a reference to this window information instance by calling this getFromID. So if the Windows full screen state is different from what we want it to be, then we can handle that case. And otherwise, we obviously don't have to do anything. So if we are going to go to a full screen state, then we need to remember the position and the size of the window when it's not full screen, so that when the user wants to restore the window from full screen to normal, then we can reset it to the position and the size that it was before. This function will store the dimensions of the client area of the window in this client area field. And this function will get the window position. So we can use this rectangle to remember where this window was before going to full screen. When we go to full screen, we don't want to have any borders or a title bar for our window, and therefore we set the style of the window to null. And to set this style at this index, we can put the value of this style, which will change the style of the window. And then we maximize the window, which effectively will put it on full screen. And when we don't have any borders or a title bar, it will fill the entire screen. And when we want to go back from the full screen state, we restore the window style and the dimension and position of the window. We don't have to do anything with the child windows when we use them with the level editor, because in the level editor, the windows don't go full screen, they just maximize. And there's always a border, so we only go full screen for standalone game, basically. So here we set the style of the window and we need to resize it to its old size before we went to full screen. And now all we have to do is to implement this function. So again, we will adjust this rectangle for the style of the window that we are going to use. So when we have the dimensions of the window, here we calculate the width and height of this window, and then we set the position to where it was before we went to full screen by using top left X and Y values. So now we have implemented this set full screen, and we can move to the next one. Again, here I'm going to check for validity of our ID, and it will just return whether this window is maximized or not. Again, we are going to implement a new function. And this one is, of course, very simple, and we can move on to the next one. This one will get us the window handle, which we will return as a void pointer because it's a platform independent thing. So each operating system will have some kind of handle to the windows they make. So there should be something that we can return always. The next one will set the window title. Maybe you should make this a white character as well to allow the user to use Unicode characters. So this one is pretty straightforward. It just sets the window text with our caption. What's next is to get the window size. Here, if we are in full screen mode, we take the full screen area, and otherwise we'll take the client area. And then we construct one of these U32 4-vector structures and return it. Next, we will implement this resize function, and it's different from what we already have because the one that we use to resize, here it accepts a rectangle and we want to resize it with a width and a height. So we need to implement another function that accepts a width and a height. So here we check if we are in full screen mode, and if so, we take the full screen area. So you might wonder why a window would resize in full screen state, and that can happen when the user would change the screen resolution, and that way we still have to resize the window. And this is why we check if the window is in full screen, and if so, we take the full screen area and otherwise the client area of the normal window. So now we have constructed a rectangle area for our window to be resized to. And now all we have to do is just call this function that we already have to resize the window. And these ones that are remaining are rather simple. I just ask for the size of the window and then we can calculate the width and the height of the window from that. So our window's right side is in the Z component and the left side is in the X component. So to calculate the width, we just subtract the left position from the right position. And we can do the same for height. To see if a window is closed, we write another function. So that's all there is to it. Now we have kind of everything that we need to handle Windows. And the advantage of doing it like this is that this part can remain platform independent. So all these functions are the same for all operating systems. And here, as long as we have the same functions with the same signatures, we can implement as many platforms as we want, and it would still work, right? One thing that we still have to do is to update this callback function to update the size of the window, because although we have this information here, client area and full screen area, if the user just resizes the window by dragging it, then nothing happens to this client area, or if the user changes the screen resolution, then this full screen area won't update as well. So to update these fields, we need to have something in this internal window proc that handles that update. And luckily, every time a window size is changed, we get a message about it. So we can handle that here. First, when a window closes, we want to set this is closed to true. And this is the message that we get when a window is closed. When the user clicks on the X button to close the window, then this message is sent. So we can receive it here and handle it. Now the problem is that we have the handle to this window, but we have no way of knowing what ID it belongs to. In other words, in what slot it's sitting in this array of window information. So we need to include the index of the window in that array somehow in this window handle. And fortunately, there is a way to do that. When we create a window, here in create window, we can also set a window long pointer and include this window ID in that field. So remember that we have something like an index for setting the style. So for example, in this set window full screen, we set a window long pointer for the index of the style, and we can do the same for the user data. There is a constant for this, and that's this one. And here we can put a value that's a long pointer. So we have to convert this ID to a long pointer. And that's it. Now this ID is included in our window class structure, basically, and we can retrieve this information whenever we have this handle. So I'm going to write a function that, given this handle, will return the ID to us. Now we can use this function to get the ID for this Windows handle. This way, in the internal window proc function, we can figure out what window we belong to so that we can set its isClosed member variable here. Now to figure out which messages we should handle to update these window dimensions, I'm going to write a test for creating a window, and then we can see what messages we receive and which ones we need to handle to update those fields. Writing this test program, however, will have to wait until the next time. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please feel free to like and subscribe. If you join me on Patreon, you'll get access to the code on GitHub, so you don't have to type everything over from the video. Plus, there are also other nice goodies and rewards exclusive to my Patreon supporters. Please use the link in the video description to check them out. I hope to see you next time. Until then, take care and happy game engineering!